Okay, good morning. This is lecture number 39, module 7. The topic is analysis of elastic stability and second order effects. We started this module in the previous class and we had covered the basic background, the introduction and the effects of axial force on flexural stiffness. There are two types of problems that we will try to solve. The first is we would like to know the critical buckling load in any given structure when it's subject to, when some elements are subject to axial loading. Because you need to have that information to do second order analysis. Why do you need that information? No, that is to judge whether you need to do second order analysis, but to actually do it you need P critical. Why do you need P critical? So we will see that you need to know the critical buckling load in order to do second order analysis. Yes, because P by P comes into play. So we will take a look at that, and we are now attempting a kind of manual method of analysis, which is a slope deflection method. But in the next session tomorrow we will look at a more sophisticated computer oriented matrix method of analysis. This is covered in the last chapter in the book on advanced structural analysis. So let us go back to the old slope deflection method which you are familiar with. Goes back to 1915, George Maney. So typically we look at any intermediate beam in a continuous beam system, and we are trying to write down slope deflection equations, which is we are trying to write the end moment equations MAB and MBA assumed clockwise positive here in terms of slopes and deflections. The slopes are theta A and theta B for that element, and the deflections are delta A and delta B, but we know that what is of relevance is not the absolute values of delta A and delta B, but the chord rotation, which is phi equal to delta B minus delta A divided by L. What we are interested in is to understand how these slope deflection equations get affected when you have an axial force. Okay, so we did this in the last class. So the same slope deflection method we now want to extend from beams to beam columns by modifying the expressions for stiffness. We also need to modify the fixed end force effects. So this is your basic element in slope deflection method. We are now going to apply an axial compression P, and we are going to see how it affects the stiffnesses. What are the conventional stiffnesses? 4 EI by L, 2 EI by L and so on. So this is how it gets affected. It is very simple. That parameter S, capital S, is the basic stiffness measure. When you do not have an axial force P, what is that value equal to? 4 EI by L for a prismatic beam element. And what is the value of R? R is the carryover factor, 0.5. Okay. So you will find that the general form of that equation does not change. It is only now we have generalized it so that we can include the effect of axial force P. So for convenience in the analysis, the beam column behavior in some elements of the structure, let us say you have a multi-storied frame, you need not take the beam column effect in all of them. You need to worry only in those elements where the P is significant. So P by PE of that element should be large, and we suggested more than 15%. For the others you can ignore this value. So if you recall in the last class, this is how that those parameters S and R vary. You can see that S starts with the value of 4 EI by L, and it can drop down to 0 when you have a high value of mu L. Mu L is the measure of the load P normalized with respect to L squared by EI. and EI by L squared. So you have those equations for R and S. If you have any given value of mu L, just plug that value into those expressions, you get ready made exact solutions for R and S. These are known as stability functions, and the default values of R and S are, for S the default value is 4, okay, 4 EI by L, and for R it will be half. Okay, it remains, so R into S is the carryover moment. So we have these expressions. We also have a tabular format if you wish to use, but the equation is very easy to put on a spreadsheet and you can get the solution accurately. We also studied the modification that needs to be done if you have the far end as hinged, then you know the 4 EI by L reduces to 3 EI by L, and the notation we use is S naught, and interestingly S naught is related to S and R. S naught is capital S into 1 minus R squared, you can prove it, and interestingly you can apply it for the default values also. If you take S as 4 EI by L and you take R as half, then within the brackets 1 minus R squared will become 0.75. So 0.75 of 4 EI by L is 3 EI by L. Okay, so we have those expressions as well. That is all we need. If you have axial compression, we have a tabular format if you want to use it. If you have axial tension, you have similar equations, but they involve hyperbolic functions, and interestingly you will find that S and S naught will increase, but R into S, the carryover moment, decreases. Okay, this is the outcome of having axial tension. All this we know. Now when we did the slope deflection method, we took advantage of situations where the far end is hinged or pinned, is it not? Because what is the advantage of doing that?
We have to find the number of variables.
Not variables, what is the right terminology? The degree of kinematic indeterminacy reduces, right? So we can take the same advantage here. If here for example you can ignore theta b, remember? So instead of 4 EI by L we use 3 EI by L. Now instead of 3 EI by L we use S naught. So we replace capital S in the previous slope deflection equations with S naught, and the chord rotation behavior is similar. And if you have the hinge at the left end A, then you have a similar set of equations. Remember the fixed end moments will also be a little different when you have axial force coming into play, and we need equations to help us solve those. You can also take advantage, if you wish, of guided fixed supports. You need to have some fresh expressions. Remember the normal stiffness value is EI by L, the default value, but you can have S tilde and R tilde. I suggest you do not do this because it really needs a very good understanding. So I am just showing it for you in case you want to use it, but you can stick to your basic slope deflection equations where you have R and S, and take advantage of S naught when you have the far end hinged. This you need not. Okay, now we need formulas for fixed end moments. For a prismatic beam, look at the boundary conditions shown. To apply a force P, actually you must facilitate it. So instead of showing fixity, you should show an ability for it to move horizontally, but you can assume it is actually rigid, but this is the correct symbol. Can you see it? This is the correct symbol instead of showing it fixed, but some books show it as fixed. It's really not very important. Now if you have a force P acting, that fixed end moment gets affected. The default value is WL by 8, you know that, okay. Default value is WL by 8, left side will be anti-clockwise, right side will be clockwise, right. That gets multiplied by a factor which you can see in those box brackets, which is the function of mu L. Mu L is PL squared by EI square root of that, right. So you have a ready made formula, there is a derivation for this, it is all described in the book, but let us just use the formula when we need to do it. If P is tensile, there is a slight modification, the hyperbolic functions come into play. We will look at one more case, the standard case is uniformly distributed load, you have similar sets of equations, is it clear? And that is all that we need to know for the time being, but you can derive for any arbitrary loading. Just go back here, the default value is Q naught L squared by 12 multiplied by a certain factor. If you have a propped cantilever, you have to do the correction as we did earlier. In the conventional procedure, we had to take half and pass it on to the other end, right. Here we do not take half, we take R, because R is the carryover factor. So you have to do something similar and you can work out those expressions, okay, in case you need to invoke these. Now let us do some problems. I want to quickly show you how the slope deflection method can be used to find the elastic instability problem, to solve the problem. That means let us take a problem like this, a 2-span continuous beam column. I first want to know, if I were to apply an axial compressive load, what is the maximum load it can take? It is going to buckle, right. Can you give me some guesses? At least can you tell me what that value will lie in between? I want to find P critical. Mind you, both the elements are going to simultaneously buckle because of the continuity requirement at the joint P. Yes, tell me. How would you arrive logically at a good guess? So you look at them independently. You have got two beam columns AB and BC. Which do you think is stronger of the two?
BC is stronger.
BC is stronger, it is shorter in length. So you better look at AB. Okay, for AB, what are the two limiting, what is the lower bound and the upper bound for P critical? What is the lower bound condition? Okay, what is the actual condition? If I isolate AB, what should I put at B? If I take out AB, A is fixed against translation and rotation. Roller? Yeah, roller and spring, right. That is the picture I should draw, right. Now it is easier for you to understand. The only variable here is K theta B, that is the rotational stiffness of that spring, which represents BC. What are its extreme values? No, of the stiffness of the spring.
0 and infinity.
0
and infinite, right.
Fixed,
so
fixed
if
and
it is
fixed
0, what is
dropped.
P critical?
0.7.
What is the effective length? At least
0.7 L.
0.7 or more accurately 0.699. If K is infinite, 0.5, that is it, you are good. So 0.699 and the length here is 2L and the other value is 0.5, that is all you have to remember, very easy, got it. So you got a good guess, your final effective length for that element must lie between 0.5 and 0.699. If you get something outside, something is wrong. So you got a good hunch, and incidentally if you look at the element BC, it will give you only values which are higher, you can work it out. So you made the right judgment by selecting AB to work out your bounds. Okay. Now let us solve this problem. You can use slope deflection method to solve this problem. How do you do that? Theta B is your unknown, single unknown. Write down your slope deflection equations. You write down your equilibrium equation directly. MBA plus MBC must be 0. What is MBA? Normally you would have written 4 EI by L. Now you will write as S into EI by L for that element AB, S. And for element BC you will write S naught instead of writing 3 EI by L. No R comes here, R goes to the joint A. So is this okay, the equation that I have written? MBA is SBA into theta B, there is no loading on that beam except for axial load P, and MBC is S naught BC into theta B, and the total moment must add up to 0, that is equilibrium, that is all you have to do. Now you have to write SBA and SBC in terms of P critical or mu L. So you have to do it in a clever way. Well, first somehow you have to bring in mu into the picture. So if you divide throughout by EI by L, you can get a transcendental equation G in terms of P critical. Does that make sense to you? I divide that equation by EI by L. Okay, can I get this equation? I need to solve this equation. How do I solve this equation? I have those trigonometric functions, stability functions for S and S naught as a function of mu into L. So I have to bring mu L into the picture. So I do that. So these are my equations. I have to bring mu L into the picture, and I can use the bisection method. So my initial bounds, as you rightly said, are mu L is P critical L squared by EI, right, which I can write as pi by KE, okay, because P critical can be written in that fashion. What is Euler buckling load? Pi squared EI by L squared. If you plug that in, it will look like that. What is it not? LE squared for any set of boundary current. So it's very convenient. So you identified 0.699 and 0.5 for element BA, right, and for element BC can we still use BA? Yes, we can, because the two spans are related. So for the second element it is half the value as that of the first element, right. Does this make sense? It is all very logical. So I can choose any value of mu L and plug it into that equation, and it should give me a value of 0, right, it should give me a value of 0 if I have got the correct solution. Now how do you solve this equation? Trial and error you can do, but then you have to do a lot of trial and error. Is there a systematic way of solving that equation? Have you studied? These are numerical methods. Newton-Raphson method will involve differentiation. It's going to be quite a mess. Runge-Kutta, okay. Some simple method which works pretty well for any transcendental equation. Have you heard of the bisection method? No. Okay, so let's look at the bisection method. So instead of drawing on the board, I've got a slide. I worked out this morning to help you out. Let's say I have to solve any equation g of x equal to 0, any equation. So we are looking at a mathematical technique, and let's say where it is 0, x is equal to x star. So let's draw a shape. Let's say it looks like this. You are in for trouble if there are many solutions. So you must trap that region where you've got a single solution, right. Now take two values of x star which will trap that solution, right. So you need a lower value and a higher value. We've already got the lower bound and upper bound. So let's choose those two values. So if you plug in one of the values, you should get a positive value of the function, and if you plug in the second value, you should get a negative value of the function. Let us say that the value which gives you a positive value is x1 and the other one is x2. So does this make sense? This is x1, this is x2. Now you tell me, what's a clever way of getting x star? Yeah, you bisect that interval between x1 and x2. You take the average of it.
This is Newton-Raphson.
This is not Newton-Raphson. In Newton-Raphson method, you have to look at the slopes.
You draw tangent.
Okay, so this is a crude method, but it works very well. So you bisect that interval, that is, find the average value. Okay, so that's what you do. Then what should you do? You plug in that value and figure out whether it's positive or negative. If it's positive, you replace x1 with this new value. If it's negative, replace. Then what do you do next?
They can again bisect.
Then put it on a do loop, right. Then you keep doing it till
Very close. Difference between the two values of x is very less.
till you converge, and you have to decide whether when it's converged. So you have to apply a tolerance and decide. Okay, that's all, very simple. So we do that here. We have the first two values of mu critical LBA. Remember we said 1 by pi by 0.5, pi by 0.5 is 2 pi, 6.29, that is the second value, and the other one was, and that gives you 4.49. Okay, so you can do this exercise, and can you see we got a pretty decent convergence where that function is nearly 0. On the right hand side it's a function. Okay, so you can stop here. If you are doing manually you can do it here, but if you want a higher tolerance you can go further. That's it. Clear? That's the fastest, coolest way of solving this problem. Okay, but if you want to do Newton-Raphson method, go ahead, but it's not going to be easy, and you have to find the derivative of that function. That's a big problem, and you may not be able to do it also. Okay, so now you plug in those values and pull out your P critical. You can use it either for element AB or for element BC, you will get the same answer, right? And the answer is 6.595 EI by L squared, which gives you an effective length KE of 0.6117, which lies between 0.5 and 0.699. Got it? That's it. So we use slope deflection method to solve a buckling problem. Clear? Okay. Next we will take the same problem, put some load on it. So now it is a conventional 2-span continuous beam problem, but it is also got an axial load. Okay, and we want to do second order analysis. You will get a good feel of it now. If you can do the conventional slope deflection method which we studied, but that cannot account for the reduction in flexural stiffness due to the axial compression, right. Now we will take two cases, one axial compression of a fairly high magnitude. Obviously that axial compression should not exceed your buckling load. So first you calculate the buckling load. From the previous example, P critical, plug in the value of EI that is given in this problem, plug in the value of the length, okay, and it turns out to be 3664 kilonewton. The actually applied load is only 1000, so you can apply that load, but it is definitely going to affect your flexural stiffnesses. The 4 EI by L, 3 EI by L will go for a toss, and it will affect differently depending on whether the force applied is compressive or tensile. So does it make sense to you? And so here you can't do the old slope deflection method, you can't do the old matrix method, you have to look at this problem as a beam column problem. Clear? So let's proceed. Take that problem. Degree of indeterminacy is still the same, kinematic indeterminacy theta b. Write down your slope deflection equations. Okay, those are very easy to write. MAB is MFAB. Normally you would have written 2 EI by L theta b, but now you will write R into S for the element AB. For BA, MFBA plus SAB, you can write SAB or SBA, does not matter, it is for the same element, into theta b. But for BC be careful, because the far end is hinged and you want to take advantage of it, so you will write it as MF naught BC, okay, for a prop cantilever, plus S naught BC into theta b. So the knot is to remind you that there is a hinge at the other end, that is why you put a knot on top. Clear? That is the equation. What is the equilibrium equation? The same old equilibrium equation. MBA plus MBC is equal to 0. Plug it all in, and the value of mu now is it's a known value because P is known. Okay, so P is given as 1200. Okay, in this problem I have taken 1200 kilonewton, not 1000. Okay, P by EI is known. Plug in that value, and you have got two values, mu L for AB and mu L for BC. So these are known values, these you do not have to do bisection method now, just plug in this value. This is the effect that is going to happen on your flexural stiffness. So if you plug in those values, you have those equations, you do not need to interpolate because we have nice calculators with us, or you can put a spreadsheet and very quickly you get those answers. If P is compressive, you can get those stiffness measures. If P is tensile, you will get those stiffness measures. It is just plugging into those trigonometric functions, and you can have your own algorithm in MATLAB where all these functions are readily available. So you just have to press a button and you will get that number very easily. Okay, but take a look. It should look close to 4 EI by L, 2 EI by L, and so on. Fixed end moments. Again plug in the formulas that we just looked at, okay, be careful and compare them with the normal fixed end moment, they should not be too far away. So you have to do it for the propped cantilever using a different formula, you know what to do, okay. So we are not here to actually solve many problems. Next, when P is tensile, you will get another set of equations, okay. Just look at the fixed end moments. When it is compressive, the first one is 103.06, when it is tensile it is 80.77. So there is a big difference on whether it is compressive or tensile, and also the magnitude of the force. And if it is just without any force, axial force, it is going to be, let us work it out, Q naught L squared by 12, can you do that? 30 into 6 squared by 12 works out to 90. So you see the default value is in between 80.77 and 103.06. So that is the kind of variation you can get in fixed end moment. Got it? Okay, let us proceed. Let us proceed. Write down the slope deflection equations. Okay, you can do it in one go. Case A, case B will handle together because the equations do not change, it is only those values which change, and then solve the write down the equilibrium equation which is the same, solve for the two cases compressive and tensile. You see there is a big difference in the solution, theta B is almost half in one case. In which case will you get less theta? When it is tensile, you can feel it, it is going to deflect less, everything will be less. You have a much stiffer structure when you have axial tension, but if it is compressive it makes things worse, and if you did not have tension or compression you will probably get a value in between, exactly midway. Got it? Does it make sense? Okay, then you plug in the values of EI theta, this is conventional slope deflection method, get your final moments. That is it. Then draw your free bodies, draw your bending moment diagram. In the bending moment diagram you have to be a little careful because for the midspan moment, if you really want to do second order analysis, you need the deflection at midspan, okay. So there is a formula you need for that, it is there in the book. If you invoke that formula, then only you can get the P delta value at the midspan, but you get the support moments here pretty accurately. Under axial tension similarly you can do, you will see that the moments are much less when you have axial tension as you would expect. Okay, let us take another problem, let us take a buckling of a frame now, we are switching from continuous beam to frame. Okay, so far so good, you are getting some idea of what we are talking about. So now, okay, let us guess the solution. You have now a T-shaped frame, it is fixed at the base A, but mind you the top beam can roll, so it is unbraced, it can move sideways, it has got rollers. Can you guess the value of P critical, the low bound and the upper bound? Here also you can put a spring, okay. Here you have 2 degrees of freedom, okay, you have 2 degrees of freedom, theta B and delta, If you want to see how it deflects, if you want to see how it's going to deflect, probably something like that. Huh?
1.7
So 2.
0.7 is wrong. Okay.
It must be 2. Yeah.
Relax. You isolate that column. The column is a cantilever. It can, so the top can roll, so it's a cantilever, but you can have some rotational fixity. So let's take the case where the rotational fixity is 0. The rotational spring there is 0. Then it's a simple cantilever. So what's your K effective? 2. Cantilever is 2. Let's say it's fully fixed against rotation. And guided. How much will it be? 1. So that's it, 1 and 2. No 0.7 here. Got it? So it's, you have to just use your brains. First of all, you should know that in an unbraced situation, you will never get a K value less than 1. So 0.7 is ruled out. It has to be greater than or equal to 1. Clear? Okay, so that's a good guess. Let's solve the problem. I want to ask you, even before I go with the solution, you can write the slope deflection equations the same old way. You can write the equilibrium equations. You have a moment equilibrium and you have a shear force equilibrium, right? Okay, now you have 2 equations. You have 2 equations. How do you find the critical buckling load? What kind of bisection method can you use now? And take a more generic case. I have degree of indeterminacy of 10, theta A, theta B, theta C, delta 1, delta 2, whatever. I have got 10 equations, okay, 10 equilibrium equations. How do I find the critical buckling load? Because it is the same buckling load which is running through all the elements. I mean, the mode shape will ensure that every beam and every column is going to buckle. This is global buckling, not local buckling. So how do I get it? Any ideas? I will give you a clue. You can write the equations always in a matrix form. Okay. How do you get the solution? Even in the previous case, did you realize that you got the solution in terms of theta b? So you had something into theta b equal to 0. So either theta b is 0 is one solution, which is called a trivial solution, or the other quantity which is g of p critical is, so it has to be an eigenvalue problem. You are dealing with ideal columns. Critical buckling load has to be an eigenvalue problem. So now how do you solve this problem? Okay, let me help you. Let me take you to one more step. This is what the equation is going to look like. Okay, you have theta b, you have delta by L. How do I get the solution for P critical? How do I get the characteristic equation?
Minus lambda I and then let it
Don't bring lambda and all into the picture. This is very simple. I want the lowest, I don't want all the eigenvalues, I don't want all the critical, I am a practical person, I realize that the lowest load will make the damn thing buckle. What's an easy way of doing it? It's a property of this matrix. Huh? So I can pull out the determinant, and the determinant should be 0. That's the characteristic of an eigenvalue problem, right? That lambda has already come into P critical, so that's what you should do. So anyway, you can write it in terms of EI by L by dividing everything by EI by L. So for a non-trivial solution, the determinant of the stiffness matrix must vanish. Remember, that's when there is no flexural stiffness left in that structure, it's going to just go on yielding, go on buckling. So this gives you instability, and this condition gives you the characteristic equation, and the solution of that, the lowest eigenvalue of that, is what we look for. So write down the determinant, which is easy to write down, and this is now the equation. You need a lower bound and upper bound, you have already identified, right. 2 and 1 was Ke. Solve by bisection method, you now know the bisection method, you get the answer. Okay, I won't waste time, you got the answer. Check, did you get a value of Ke between 1 and 2? Yeah, you did. The fact that it is close to 1 suggests that the beam is pretty flexible. Okay, the highest it can go is to 2. Okay, you can do one more problem, we won't do it. Second order effects for the same structure, once you got the P critical, it is done in the book. In fact, many problems are done in the book, but I am going to end with just one problem, one last problem, which is a good problem to look at. Okay. Now I have a portal frame now, rigid jointed portal frame, and I want to look at two conditions. The frame is braced by other elements in the building and the frame is unbraced, and I get two different solutions. And also the relative stiffness of beam to column is crucial. So I bring in a parameter gamma, which is EI of the beam to EI of the column, and let us look at different values of gamma, 0.5, 1, 5, 10. Okay. Let us say EIB by EIC gamma is equal to 0. What does it mean? That means the beam is very, very flexible. Okay, so those two columns are going to, well, cantilever is, it's not going to be stable. It's like having hinges there at B and C, it's going to collapse, right. That's one extreme if it's unbraced. If it's braced, let's look at that. Let's look at the two modes of failure. If it's braced, how do you think it will buckle? Braced means no sway. How do you think it will buckle? It will buckle like that. Okay, you are doing like that. Tell me what is P critical going to be bounded between two extreme values of P critical. What is K effect?
K effect is 1.
One is 1 limit, the other limit 0.7. Good. What about this case? This is sway, this is our conventional sway picture. Okay, what are the two limits here?
Guided it is 1 and
what is the lower bound?
lower bound
1
is
and upper bound? Why is the lower bound 1? No? It's a cantilever, no? Because so it's going to be like a cantilever if
guided roller and
P
here
is,
it is guided
yeah.
and it is pinned here.
It's a guided roller, so
cantilever.
it's effectively a cantilever.
Cantilever.
We've looked at these things, no? If it's hinged here and can move there, the deflected shape is that of a cantilever. You have to think. Okay, so if you can think, let's hope you can. So these are the values which you correctly said, and if it's a hinge, it's going to be infinite. I mean, it's an unstable structure. So it's going to be 2 and 0, 2 and 0. Okay, so let's plug in those values. Let's look at the frame braced against side sway. How do you solve it? You can take half the frame. Why should you take the full frame? Work with half the frame. What's your degree of indeterminacy? Theta B, okay, 1. Write down your equation. Okay. Now, okay, we make an assumption here we are saying that we worry about axial compression only in element AB, we do not worry about in BC, because if you worry about in BC, then it is a more complicated problem. Why do not we worry about in BC? Because it is going to be very small. So these are intelligent shortcuts you can take. Only where you have high axial compression, you worry about treating that element as a beam column element. Is it clear? So with that assumption, do you agree that the equation will be as shown there? MBA is S naught BA into theta B, and MB is EI by L, in this case L is L by 2. It would have not been EI by L by 2 if you had axial compression, you will have that S tilde, so that is tricky. So we will do it this way, it is very easy to solve, it is a simple equation, solve, you have the two bounds which we discussed, okay, the maximum value you can get is 2.047, and we are asked to solve this for different values of gamma, okay. So this is your characteristic equation, divide throughout by EI C to get it in that form. You have the two limits between 1 and 0.699, use the bisection method, and you have to do it for 4 different conditions. Let us do it for 1, do it for 0.5, you got the answer with fairly good tolerance, you plug in the value, you get some value of your critical buckling load. You repeat this exercise for the other gamma values, and finally you draw a plot, and the plot is going to look like this. If on the x axis I increase the beam stiffness, beam rigidity relative to the column rigidity, the starting value is pi squared EI by L squared, okay. So that it starts with 1, and the maximum value is when K effective is 0.699, so you get 2.047 for a propped cantilever. Is it clear? So you should be able to guess this kind of shape, and you can, for any value of gamma you can get the answer. How did we generate this? Slope deflection method. It is going to be a little more difficult if you look at the case of width sway. Why is it going to be more difficult? 2 degrees of freedom, 2 degrees of freedom, but you can correctly guess the bounds, lower bound and upper bound. So 2 degrees of freedom, you have to write the equations carefully, including sway. We have learned how to do this, and if you substitute, if you write down the equilibrium equations, you have to have a sway degree of freedom, which we have done this problem earlier in slope deflection method. So HA should be 0, you plug it all in, you get equation like that. What should we do? We should write down the determinant as equal to 0, and you will get a function in terms of P critical. Again, the two lower bounds, the two bounds are infinity and 2, but 1 divided by infinity is 0. So your values are 0 and pi by 2. Solve by the bisection method, you get another set of solutions, okay. You get very low value. Naturally under side sway you do not expect a high value, you get a low value. Similarly you do for the other gamma cases, and finally draw the picture. This is the summary of your results. You will find that asymptotically as gamma increases, P critical will touch the upper bound that we talked about. The upper bound is 2.047 pi squared EI by L squared when the frame is braced, and it is only 0.25. Why is it only 0.25? Yeah, we've seen how that upper bound works out. So that's the dramatic. So deciding whether a building is braced or unbraced has massive significance in terms of determining what's the critical buckling load. Okay, so have you got some idea about how to use slope deflection method to solve problems where you need to solve it? If you don't have a problem of buckling, instability, don't do all this. This is second order analysis, sophisticated analysis, advanced analysis, and this is not there in your examination portion, it is just there for you to understand how this can be applied. Now we will do the same thing tomorrow using matrix formulation, very beautiful formulation, and that can handle any degree of indeterminacy. That is for tomorrow. Thank you.